Hey guys, this is Pam Baldwin. Today we are going to use some of the digital items from the Candyland release, as well as the Documenter Kit to create, well, I'm going to show you my process for how I created this particular spread. So one of the things that we're going to talk about is how I used digital stamps to create my own custom die cut or embellishment for this card up here on the right hand side. And the other thing we're going to look at is how we can alter some of the digital versions of the journaling cards to be able to create spaces for journaling. Okay, let's get started. So I want to start off with the process for how I made this card here. So we're going to create a new 3x4 card. I'm going to say File, New, Blank File, and I want this to be 300 pixels per inch, and I want it to be 3 inches wide and 4 inches tall with a white background. So if you look closely at this picture, sorry, I'll just bring you back for just a second here. I really only printed and cut out the ribbon here, and then I used foam dots to adhere it to one of the cards from the kit, like the physical card from the Documenter kit. That's how I chose to do it, but you could certainly use a digital card as your background as well, or pattern paper, or any other way that you wanted to do it. So right now we're just making this little ribbon die cut. Okay, sorry. So we've got our new 3x4 canvas here, and I already have the digital stamp open at the bottom in my project bin. I'm using Photoshop Elements. I can't remember what version, maybe 13? Anyhow, I'm using Photoshop Elements. We're going to drag the stamp up onto the canvas, and you'll see that it's automatically going to fill in the full size of the canvas. So I'm going to shrink it down just a little bit. So one of the coolest things about using digital elements is that you can resize them to whatever scale you want for your project. The physical stamps are awesome, but I really like the versatility that the digital version offers for this very reason. So I've just resized it so it's a little bit smaller. I do still want it to take up a good portion of my journaling card or of my 3x4 space, and I want to make sure that this center space is big enough for me to add some journaling. So I think this looks good, and I'm going to say that this is a good size. The other thing that I'm going to do is actually use one of the other digital versions of the journaling card in the kit, and I want to pull the colors out of this card to be able to change the colors in my ribbon. Being able to use a digital version of a card from the same kit is awesome because then you can make sure that all of the elements coordinate. So what we're going to do is grab this little color selection or color picker tool. It looks like an eyedropper on the left hand side in the toolbar. And I'm going to start with the light peachy color first, and this is going to be the center of my ribbon, so I can just click on anywhere on the card that I want my color selection to be. Then go back to the card that I'm working on. And I'm going to grab the paint bucket tool. If you look at the color swatches at the bottom here, you can see the color swatch that's on top is that peachy color that I just selected. So now whatever I click on this image here with the stamp layer selected, it's going to fill in that portion with the top color from my color swatch. So I'm going to click in the middle of that ribbon. It's saying that it's a smart layer. Basically what that means is if this wasn't the size that I wanted it to be at the end, if I say OK to simplifying this, then I could run into some problems with distortion if I were to try to dramatically increase the size of this. I'm not worried about that because it's already the size that I want it to be. So I'm saying, okay, go ahead and simplify that layer. I'm clicking in the middle of this ribbon, and that's the first layer. Now I'm going to go back, and I'm going to get the orange color from the card as well. Again, with the color selection tool, click on the area of orange that I want. Then I'm going to go back to the card that I'm working on with the paint bucket, and I'm just going to fill in the remaining portions there. So this is just a really fun graphic version of the ribbon now. So the last thing I'm going to do is go ahead and add some journaling onto this ribbon. So my family was playing Yahtzee one night after dinner, and Emily, who is the youngest of all of us, she's only 4 years old, ended up beating the pants off of everyone else who was playing. So that's what my journaling is about here. I think it was something along the lines of, and Okay, so I've got a little bit of journaling on there, and I can reposition it into the center of the ribbon. So my intention now is to just go ahead and print this onto some white cardstock or matte photo paper. I usually go for the matte photo paper. It makes the printed colors of your digital items like really vibrant. They look wonderful when you use like a photo paper for printing your digital stuff on. So this is pretty much ready to print. So I'll print it out, fussy cut around the edges, and then like I said, when I was creating this, I did exactly that. I fussy cut out my newly designed badge and then just adhered it onto a 3x4 card from the Candyland Documenter Kit with some foam adhesive tabs. And that's how that came to be. Okay, so the next thing we're going to look at is how to create a little bit more journaling space on some of the cards that are in your kits. So this is a digital version of the card, and I'm using the PNG version here. One of the things that I should say is that when you purchase the journaling cards, the digital journaling cards, you have two options of opening them up. You can open them up as PNG files, which means you get to open up each individual card, or you can open up the PDFs, which means that they're pretty much formatted, ready for you to print already. You just can go ahead and print them out exactly as they are. I usually like to only print what I know I'm going to use or what I need, so I prefer to work with the PNG version of the cards. So when I was opening this card, I said it was the PNG version. But what happened is, because the background of this card is naturally white, for some of them, not for all of them, you'll end up with kind of like a transparent layer instead. So you can see I'm moving this around and the back isn't filled in white just yet. So what I would like to do is actually create a new 3x4 canvas to be able to sit this on. So I'm saying it's a new canvas, it's 300 pixels per inch, and the size is 3 inches wide by 4 inches tall, and I'm going to say OK. So I'm going to click and drag that journaling card up onto my new canvas. They're always sized just a little bit smaller than 3x4, and I'm sure that that's because when you go ahead and print them, if it was exactly 3x4, you might have a hard time squeezing it into the pockets. So they're always sized just a little bit smaller so that they'll fit more comfortably into the pockets there. So now this looks a little bit more like what the physical version of the card looks like on a white background here. And it kind of is easier to see what you're working with. I often like to add a lot of journaling onto my pages and stories and that kind of thing, but I still like the designs of the cards, so I kind of want the best of both worlds. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a space on here for my journaling that'll be a nice white crisp background so you can actually still read the words, but then I'll still be able to maintain some of the design. We're just going to alter it just a little bit. So what I've done is I've selected the rectangle tool over here in the toolbar, and I'm going to pick a white color so that it matches the background. If this was a colored background, I could use the color selection tool and pick up the color of the background and use that for the shape as well. But for this example, the white background is going to be just fine. Okay, so I've got an unconstrained size here, which means wherever I click and drag is going to be the size of the rectangle that'll show up on my page. And I'm going to pick a spot here where kind of there's a gap between the rows, and I'm going to stretch it down to another reasonable area so that I now have this big open area to go ahead and add my journaling. So the next thing that we'll end up doing is creating a text box, or making a text box here so that I can go ahead and add my journaling. And I like to use like a typewriter style font. The one that I tend to use most often is this one called Remington Noiseless. It's a free font that you can find, I think, on dafont.com. And I usually use like around a size 10. And I'm just going to make the spacing in between the lines here automatic. If you look over on the right hand side right now, you'll see that my text layer is underneath the shape. So when I start typing, you're not going to see anything. That's okay. You just have to rearrange the layer order. So I'll slide it up, and now you can see that's where my journaling will end up being. So I could go ahead, fill in all of the text onto my journaling card here, and then when I print it and cut it out, I've got my story on the original card, but just a slightly modified version of it, so I get the best of both worlds in having the design that's there as well as my story filled in. So I hope that this was helpful and that you found some inspiration and some fun ideas for your projects. And thank you so much for stopping by today.